She was just 18. A young woman with dreams so bright they lit up the lives of everyone who knew her. Kelvi McCrae was a daughter, a sister, a friend to many, and a budding entrepreneur. Her passion for beauty and cosmetology wasn't just a career path, it was her way of making the world around her more vibrant. Her smile was infectious, her kindness unmistakable, and her future limitless. But all of it, her dreams, her laughter, her life, was stolen in a single brutal moment. On a quiet evening in West Palm Beach, Florida, Kelvi was at home, sharing a FaceTime call with her closest friends. It was just an ordinary moment, filled with casual conversations, light-hearted laughter, and plans for the future. The kind of moment no one expects to be their last. And then it happened. The sound of a door being forced open. A scream. Chaos. In the span of seconds, everything changed. Bullets rang out, shattering the calm of her home and the hearts of those who loved her. On the other end of that FaceTime call, her friends sat frozen in horror as they witnessed the unimaginable. The person responsible for ending Kelvi's life wasn't a stranger. It was someone she had once trusted.
First at 10, we're hearing from the family of a teenager murdered in her own West Palm Beach home. Police say Kelvi McCrae's ex-boyfriend killed her and then himself.
Into something far more dangerous. Why did this happen? Kelvi had done what so many are told to do when a relationship turns violent. She left. She walked away. She sought help. Just a day earlier, she had gone to the police, reporting the abuse, the threats, the fear she lived with. She thought she was safe. But safety never came. And now we are left to ask, how did the system fail her so completely? Could her death have been prevented? Kelvi McCrae's story is not just one of heartbreak. It is a story of missed warnings, ignored cries for help, and the devastating consequences of domestic violence. In this story, we uncover the life she lived, the tragedy that took her from us, and the questions that still haunt everyone who hears her name. Before we go further, please consider supporting our channel by subscribing and turning on the notification bell icon. And remember to like, share, and comment, as your engagement truly means the world to us. This is the story of Kelvi McCrae. A story that demands to be heard. A story that leaves us questioning everything we thought we knew about protection, justice, and what it means to truly be safe. How did it come to this? And could it happen again? Before her name became a tragic headline, Kelvi McCrae was a young woman whose life was brimming with possibility. At just 18 years old, she was already carving out a path for herself. Bold, ambitious, and unapologetically driven. Kelvi wasn't just another teenager navigating her way through life. She was a force of nature, someone who seemed destined to leave her mark on the world. Born and raised in the vibrant city of West Palm Beach, Florida, Kelvi was deeply rooted in her community. The McCrae family was close-knit, the kind of family that celebrated milestones with joy and leaned on each other during hard times. Kelvi's role in the family was as the light. Her smile could brighten a room, and her energy had a way of making people feel at ease. From a young age, Kelvi had a passion for creativity. She loved experimenting with hairstyles, makeup, and fashion, always eager to make others feel beautiful. That passion turned into a dream, and by her late teens, Kelvi had already begun to pursue a career in cosmetology. Enrolled in cosmetology school, she wasn't just a student, she was an innovator. She had plans to open her own salon one day, a space where she could combine her artistic skills with her love for helping others feel confident and empowered. Kelvi wasn't waiting for opportunities to come to her, she was creating them. She had already started her own small business as a hairdresser, gaining a loyal client base even before earning her cosmetology license. To her family and friends, this was Kelvi in her purest form, always striving, always dreaming, always pushing forward. But Kelvi's life wasn't just about her ambitions. She was loved by everyone who knew her. Her friends describe her as someone who could light up the darkest day, a person who listened without judgment and gave without hesitation. Her presence was magnetic. People gravitated toward her not just because of her talent, but because of her heart. For Kelvi, the future was limitless. She had plans to expand her business, to travel, to build a life that reflected her strength and determination. But there was one part of her life that had become increasingly difficult, a part that would ultimately overshadow all her dreams and aspirations. When she met Kayshawn Shaw, she was just a teenager looking for love. On the surface, he seemed charming, attentive, and willing to support her goals. Their relationship began like so many others do, with laughter and moments of connection. To Kelvi, he was someone she could lean on, someone who seemed to understand her in ways others didn't. But as time went on, cracks began to show. Their relationship, once filled with joy, began to shift. Kezian's support became controlling, his affection possessive. Kelvi, who had always been so independent, began to feel the weight of his anger, his jealousy, and his inability to let her shine without feeling threatened. Her friends and family noticed the changes. Kelvi wasn't the same vibrant, carefree young woman they had always known. There were moments of silence where there had once been laughter, moments of hesitation where there had once been confidence. But Kelvi was strong. She tried to handle it on her own, to navigate the complexities of a relationship that was becoming increasingly difficult to manage. Kayshawn, however, wasn't willing to let go. As Kelvi began to distance herself, his actions became more aggressive, more erratic. There were arguments, moments of fear that Kelvi confided to those closest to her. But like so many young women in similar situations, she likely believed she could handle it, that she could find a way out on her terms. By early 2024, Kelvi had made a decision. She was done. She ended the relationship, determined to move forward with her life. But Kayshawn wouldn't let her go. Despite her attempts to separate herself, he continued to show up, to reach out, to demand her attention in ways that became increasingly threatening. Just one day before her death, Kelvi went to the police. Kelvi returned home, likely feeling a small sense of relief that she had taken a step toward reclaiming her life. But in less than 24 hours, everything would change. Her life, once so full of promise and hope, would come to an unimaginable end. And the question we are left with is why? Why wasn't she protected? Why did her cries for help go unanswered? And how can we ensure that no other young woman suffers the same fate? It was a quiet Wednesday evening in West Palm Beach, Florida, when an unthinkable act of violence shattered the stillness of the night. Kelvi McCrae, an 18-year-old with her life ahead of her, was seated at the dinner table, chatting with friends over FaceTime. The call was a small moment of comfort in a life she was trying to reclaim after breaking free from an abusive relationship. Kelvi's laughter filled the room, a small but defiant sign of hope. But within minutes, that hope was stolen. Unbeknownst to her friends on the other end of the call, a figure was lurking nearby, Kayshawn Shaw, her 19-year-old ex-boyfriend. His arrival wasn't announced by words or knocks. It was heralded by the sound of breaking glass and heavy footfalls. Shaw had forced his way into the home they once shared, a place that should have been Kelvi's refuge. He was armed, driven by rage and desperation. Kelvi's friends on the video call watched in horror as the scene unfolded before them. Shaw burst into the room, his presence like a storm breaking loose. In the seconds that followed, he raised his weapon and fired multiple shots. The video call captured the chaos, the screams, the pleas, and then silence. Kelvi was hit in the head, neck, and back. Her friends could do nothing but watch as their vibrant, young friend fell lifeless to the floor. Shaw turned the gun on himself moments later, ending his life with a single shot to the head. When the police arrived, both Kelvi and Shaw were clinging to life. They were rushed to St. Mary's Medical Center, where Kelvi succumbed to her injuries that same night. Shaw died the following afternoon. Police reports revealed chilling details of that night. Witnesses on the FaceTime call immediately identified Shaw as the gunman, providing authorities with vital information. The aftermath painted a devastating picture: a young woman full of dreams, gunned down in her own home, and a man consumed by jealousy and violence lying lifeless nearby. In the days following, the community learned that Shaw had been wanted by the police just hours before the attack. He had a history of violence, with warrants out for aggravated assault and domestic battery. Despite this, he remained in the home because, as some reports noted, He had nowhere else to go. It was a decision that proved fatal for Kelvi. The scene left behind wasn't just a crime scene. It was a shattered testament to a life cut short and a community grappling with questions that may never have answers. How did it come to this? Why wasn't there a way to protect her? And what warning signs, if any, were overlooked in the lead-up to this tragedy? Kelvi's death serves as a haunting reminder of the urgency to address domestic violence. It's a story of loss, of preventable tragedy, and of the devastating consequences of unchecked rage. It's a story that demands to be told, not just for Kelvi but for the countless others who have suffered in silence. In the wake of Kelvi McCrae's tragic death, investigators began piecing together the sequence of events that led to the horrific murder-suicide. The picture they uncovered was devastating and raised questions about how this tragedy could have been prevented. Just 24 hours before the shooting, Kelvi took a brave step. She walked into the West Palm Beach Police Department and reported the abuse she had been suffering at the hands of Keyshawn Shaw. Her account detailed months of escalating violence and control. She told officers that Shaw had choked her, held her at gunpoint, and refused to let her leave their home, effectively imprisoning her. Kelvi's fear was palpable in her statement, but her courage to report Shaw was a testament to her determination to reclaim her life. Police took her report seriously. Charges of domestic battery, aggravated assault with a firearm, and false imprisonment were filed against Shaw. Warrants for his arrest were issued, and law enforcement began searching for him. But time was not on their side. Shaw evaded immediate apprehension, and within hours, the warrants became a grim backdrop to a tragedy that would unfold. On the night of the murder, investigators believe Shaw had already resolved to end both Kelvi's life and his own. When they arrived at the crime scene, what they found painted a chilling narrative. Kelvi's lifeless body was discovered on the floor of her home, surrounded by signs of chaos. Shaw's body was nearby, his gun resting beside him, a weapon that had ended 2 lives and shattered countless others. Detectives meticulously examined the scene, collecting evidence to piece together the harrowing final moments. The firearm, later confirmed as the murder weapon, was registered to Shaw. Its proximity to his body confirmed what Kelvi's friends had reported during their frantic calls to 911, that Shaw had turned the gun on himself after killing her. The positioning of the bodies told a tragic story. Kelvi had been shot multiple times, with bullets striking her head, neck, and back, signs that this was not a random act but a targeted attack. Blood spatter patterns and bullet trajectories suggested she had tried to escape, a desperate bid for survival that ended in heartbreak. Witness testimony from Kelvi's friends who had been on the FaceTime call added another layer of detail to the investigation. They described the moment Shaw burst into the room, armed and enraged. Their accounts were haunting: screams, pleading, and then gunfire. One friend described feeling helpless as the call disconnected, knowing they had just witnessed something irreversible. The timeline of events became clearer as law enforcement reviewed the evidence. Kelvi had been enjoying a quiet evening at home, unaware that Shaw was closing in. He had broken into the house with the explicit intent to harm her, bypassing locked doors and windows. His actions were methodical and deliberate, pointing to a premeditated act of violence rather than a spontaneous outburst. As investigators delved deeper into Shaw's background, a disturbing pattern emerged. This wasn't his first brush with the law, nor was it the first time Kelvi had reported his abusive behavior. Friends and family recounted incidents where Shaw's temper and possessiveness had been evident, raising the question of whether more could have been done to protect Kelvi before it was too late. Forensic analysts worked tirelessly to reconstruct the crime. Gunshot residue tests confirmed Shaw had fired the weapon, while autopsy reports provided a chilling confirmation of Kelvi's injuries. The evidence left no doubt about what had transpired in those final moments. Yet, amidst the details of the investigation, a painful truth lingered. Kelvi had sought help, but the system failed to act swiftly enough to save her. The warrants issued for Shaw's arrest, though critical, came too late to prevent the tragedy. As the investigation concluded, the community was left grappling with the reality of what had happened. Kelvi's death was not just a result of one man's violent actions, but a stark reminder of the urgent need for stronger measures to protect victims of domestic violence. Her bravery in reporting Shaw should have been a turning point, a chance to intervene. Instead, it became part of the heartbreaking narrative of a life cut short. The investigation closed with answers, but it also left behind lingering questions. Could more have been done to save Kelvi? What can be changed to ensure no other victim suffers the same fate? For Kelvi's loved ones, the answers come too late. But her story, and the details uncovered during the investigation, serve as a call to action, to listen, to act, and to protect those who cannot protect themselves. The devastating truth about what transpired in Kelvi McCrae's final hours is both deeply tragic and a sobering reminder of the consequences of unchecked violence. As the investigation unfolded, one fact became heartbreakingly clear. The man responsible for her death was Keyshawn Shaw, the same person she once trusted, the person she had loved but had feared in the end. Keyshawn's inability to accept the breakup had reached a terrifying peak. He could not reconcile with the fact that Kelvi had chosen to move forward with her life, away from the cycle of abuse and control that had come to define their relationship. His escalating behavior, choking her, imprisoning her, threatening her with a firearm, was not just a cry for dominance but a calculated campaign of terror aimed at ensuring she remained within his grasp. When Kelvi finally found the courage to leave, it marked the moment Keyshawn resolved to ensure she never could. Witness testimonies, physical evidence, and forensic reports confirmed every chilling detail. The FaceTime call had captured the horrifying moments when Shaw entered Kelvi's home. Her friends, helpless on the other side of the screen, could only describe what they saw and heard: Keyshawn's fury, Kelvi's pleas, and the gunshots that echoed in the room. It was an execution carried out by someone whose love had warped into obsession and rage. Kelvi was rushed to the hospital in critical condition, but the injuries were too severe. She succumbed to the gunshot wounds shortly after the attack, leaving her family to grapple with an unimaginable loss. Her life, a bright, promising future as a cosmetologist and entrepreneur, was cut short in an instant. Her mother and siblings, who had supported her through the ups and downs of life, were now faced with planning her funeral. The following day, Shaw's body was discovered, lifeless, at the same crime scene. He had turned the gun on himself after taking Kelvi's life, as if to escape the weight of his actions. His death, while bringing a conclusion to the immediate events, provided no solace to those mourning Kelvi. Instead, it raised questions about why the system hadn't acted quickly enough to protect her. Kelvi's story forces us to confront the harsh realities of domestic violence. She did everything right. She reported the abuse, she reached out for help, she tried to distance herself. But the mechanisms designed to protect victims like Kelvi fell short. The arrest warrants issued against Shaw were crucial, but came too late to prevent the tragedy. Kelvi's decision to step forward with her story, to report Shaw's escalating violence, should have been the turning point in her journey to safety. Instead, it became a footnote in the timeline leading to her death. The aftermath of the case sent ripples through Kelvi's community and beyond. Family and friends expressed their grief, anger, and frustration. Vigils were held in her honor, with candles illuminating her smiling photos, images that stood in stark contrast to the violence that ended her life. Her story became a rallying cry for change, a stark example of the urgent need to strengthen protections for victims of domestic abuse. This is not just a story of a life lost, but a cautionary tale about the cost of inaction. The lack of swift intervention allowed Shaw to carry out his deadly plan. Kelvi's bravery in reporting him is a testament to her strength, but it is also a haunting reminder that courage alone is not enough. The system must be prepared to act decisively, to intervene before it's too late. As we reflect on Kelvi's life, the pain of her family, and the heartbreak of her friends, one question lingers: how many more lives must be lost before we ensure that no victim's cries for help go unanswered? For Kelvi, it's a question that comes too late. But for others living in fear, it's a question that must be answered now. Her story is one that demands we listen, act, and fight for change. It is a story of love, loss, and resilience, a story that will never be forgotten. Kelvi McCrae's life mattered, and her legacy must be a catalyst for a future where no one else endures the fate she faced. Kelvi McCrae's death was more than just a loss to her family. It was a wound inflicted on her entire community. The young woman who once lit up every room she entered was now a symbol of tragedy, and the aftermath of her murder left an indelible mark on those who knew her and even those who didn't. Her family spoke of her in glowing terms, painting a vivid picture of the person Kelvi was. Her uncle described her as a beacon of light, saying, "She had a flair for life, and her light inspired everyone around her. She had dreams, and she wasn't afraid to chase them." He recalled her passion for beauty and her vision of becoming a successful cosmetologist, reflecting on how she had already started to carve her path in the world. Kelvi's mother, though overcome with grief, shared stories of her daughter's resilience and creativity. She spoke of how Kelvi had been a fighter her whole life, someone who wasn't afraid to stand up for herself or for others. The knowledge that Kelvi tried to seek help, tried to escape her situation, made the pain even harder to bear. For her mother, the loss was a daily reminder of how fragile safety can be and how fleeting justice feels when action comes too late. The toll of Kelvi's death wasn't confined to her immediate family. Friends spoke of their devastation, recalling the horror of witnessing her final moments over FaceTime. For many of them, it wasn't just about losing a friend, it was about grappling with the helplessness they felt, knowing they could do nothing to stop the unthinkable from happening. Her community also rallied together, holding vigils in her honor. Candles flickered against the evening sky as people gathered to share memories, pray, and call for change. Flowers and handwritten notes adorned makeshift memorials, each one a testament to the profound impact Kelvi had on the lives of others. She was remembered not only for her beauty and talent, but also for her kindness, her laughter, and her unwavering determination to succeed. Beyond the personal grief, Kelvi's case also reignited conversations about domestic violence and the systemic failures that allow such tragedies to occur. Activists and advocates pointed to the critical gaps in how domestic abuse cases are handled. Despite Kelvi's decision to report Keishan Shaw's violence, the response wasn't swift enough to save her life. Many asked, why wasn't more done to protect her, and how can we prevent this from happening again? Experts weighed in, emphasizing the need for education and resources for both victims and law enforcement. Domestic violence cases are often treated as isolated incidents rather than part of a larger pattern of abuse, leaving victims vulnerable even after they've sought help. Kelvi's case became a chilling example of why comprehensive reform is urgently needed, why protective measures, such as immediate apprehension of violent offenders, can mean the difference between life and death. The tragedy also highlighted the importance of community support and awareness. Advocates called for expanded access to shelters, counseling, and legal aid for those escaping abusive relationships. They stressed that leaving an abuser is one of the most dangerous times for a victim and that the system must be prepared to act decisively during these critical moments. As Kelvi's family continues to mourn her loss, they have also found ways to honor her memory. They've spoken out about the importance of recognizing the warning signs of abuse and encouraged others to take action when they see someone in need. In her name, they hope to raise awareness about domestic violence, ensuring that no other family has to endure the heartbreak they now live with every day. For viewers, Kelvi's story serves as a stark reminder of how quickly life can be taken away and how vital it is to protect those at risk. Her life was filled with promise, and her death was a loss not just to those who loved her but to the world that could have benefited from her talent, creativity, and spirit. As this story comes to a close, it leaves us with questions that linger long after the details have been told. How do we as a society ensure that victims like Kelvi receive the protection they deserve? What can each of us do to support those in abusive relationships? And most painfully, how do we come to terms with the lives lost to violence that could have been prevented? Kelvi's story does not end with her death. It lives on as a call to action, a demand for justice, compassion, and change. Let her memory be a beacon of hope for others, a light that continues to inspire even in the face of unimaginable darkness. Kelvi McCrae's story is one that resonates far beyond her own community. It's a tragedy that speaks to the dangers of ignoring the signs of domestic violence and the urgency of taking action when someone reaches out for help. As we reflect on her life, we must also ask ourselves some hard questions. Could more have been done to save Kelvi? Are there others out there, right now, in desperate need of help before it's too late? If this story moved you, consider sharing it, not just to honor Kelvi's memory but to spread awareness about intimate partner violence. It's a topic that too often goes unspoken, yet its impacts are devastating and far-reaching. By sharing this video, you're not just sharing her story, you're amplifying a call for change, for education, and for action. If you or someone you know is in an abusive relationship, don't wait. Seek for help, and reaching out can save a life. We also want to hear from you. What do you think could be done to prevent tragedies like this in the future? How can we better support victims and hold perpetrators accountable? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters. Together, we can honor her memory by fostering a world where stories like hers are no longer a reality. Thank you for watching, and please, if this video resonates with you, like, comment, and subscribe to support ongoing efforts to bring these stories to light.